Hello, welcome. Today I'm going to show everybody how we created a Zapier that would make it so that our buyer brokerage agreement gets automatically sent through Docusign to both the agent on our team who's filling it out and also the buyer in question by just them having to fill out a Google form. So hopefully that makes sense. So the first thing that I will start with is obviously you have to make a Google form. So this is ours. We have one like master Google form that has, as you can see, all of our contracts on it: buyer brokerage, buyer purchase, listing agreement. And this is what the agents on our team use to fill out when they need a new contract written. And then our admin, John, gets a response, like he sees the response to this Google form, and then he can write the listing agreement or the buyer agreement. But for buyer brokerage, because you need it sometimes in a very quick turnaround time, and because it's now legally required before showing a house to your clients, we wanted a way that the agents on our team could just fill out this buyer brokerage agreement portion of this form and it would automatically get sent to their clients through DocuSign. And that way they wouldn't have to worry about not having a signed buyer brokerage agreement, or have to worry about John taking the time to actually input their names into DocuSign and send it to them. So this is the form that we have. This was an existing form that I made work with our Zapier. So you can either create a form specifically for this, or if you already have a form like this, what you want to just make sure that you do is have your buyer one name, buyer one contact email, buyer two name, buyer two contact email, and all of these like form fills match up with the template that you make on DocuSign, which we'll go through in a second. So the first thing is obviously making sure that you have a one buyer in here. We make buyer one required because, of course, if someone is filling this out, they have at least one buyer. You can see buyer two is not required because not everybody has a second buyer. We've not yet run into a situation where we have more than two, but if that comes up, we will make changes. And then for Agent Oliver name, again, we were trying to make this form as easy as possible so that the agents on our team could very easily just go in and fill out as little information as possible and be able to send it as quickly as possible. So we gave a list of the agents on our team, and they just pick their name from this list. And then they pick their email from the list that matches up with their name. And then we also have a drop down in our form you'll see later when I go through it. This is actually a drop down that they can select what commission that they want to appear on the form. Those are our options right now, obviously subject to change. And then notes at the bottom here that only our admin team will see. So that's just for the admin team, such as me, John, and Mike, in case there's anything special about this particular buyer brokerage agreement. So that's the Google form. And then the next thing that you will want to do now that you have that created is to make sure you create your DocuSign template for a buyer brokerage agreement. So we have our templates over here. It's called New Buyer Agency Agreement for us because they updated the forms here in Maryland. So you can see we have a template name. These are the documents that we have in here. This is for, I think, EXP wants these forms, or Maryland, whoever needs them, whatever legally the form is, this is the one that we need for our business. And this is just a cancellation guarantee that we throw in for ourselves. So we added our two documents, and then the next step, you add recipients. So we have we have Agent Oliver, then we have buyer one, buyer two, and then John receives a copy after it's signed. That's just our admin, just so that he can then file it and document it. So as you can see, we have a set signing order, but we have everybody as number one except for John, who receives a copy after everything is signed. That's why he's number two. But everybody else receives it at the exact same time. And we did this for a couple of reasons. The first being that everybody needs to sign in order for it to be like valid, of course. So we didn't want it to go number one to buyer one, and then they don't sign it for 4 hours because they're just sitting around not worrying about it. Like, I'll get to it, whatever. And then the agent can't sign it, and then they have to go to their showing, and then they don't have time. So we did it all at the same time so that the agent can immediately just sign it, get it out of the way, and buyer one and buyer two will get it at the same time. So that's the reason that we did that. This is just talking about how often the like reminders will happen. For us, we have every 2 days, but you can do it every one. And then you hit next. So this is our cancellation guarantee, but the important thing is going to be these like standard fields over here. So we just need these people to sign, and then we throw in date signed here. This is a special function that we created that I hope this doesn't change anything. So you can see our formula right there. You're going to want to copy this exactly, because what this does is it takes the date signed, which is today, and adds 1 year to that date. So that way it automatically in this little section here will say that it ends exactly a year after they sign it without our agents having to input any information at all. This will automatically, the date will go 1 year after here. So that's important. And then the broker fee. So this is where that commission comes into play. I have this automatically checked. And then I have this as you can see on the right here, the options that exactly match up with my Google form. So those are my form fill options that can be checked. This is for Agent Oliver. That's who I have it assigned to as like their drop down. But again, this will be pre-filled in from that Google form. And then the important thing with this is to make sure that you don't have a default option. You want it to just say select. You don't want to pick one of these as your default option because that will override the Google form. So whatever you select in the Google form, it won't matter. It'll be overridden by the default option. So you want to keep that at select. Scrolling down, we have some more names, emails, and signatures. So their name and email in here will match up with their name and email that you have on the Google form. So that's why we're asking for those specific things. And then date signed will always just be the date that they signed it. So you don't need to worry about that. And then we put our broker license in here. We put eXp Realty in here. We like pre-filled out these two things so that they're always going to be filled out like that. We also pre-filled out this section that talks about the broker fee calculated. Obviously this is going to be different for your business and for your brokerage, but we pre-fill out a lot of this before we upload the template, and we do that through zip forms, or you can just go to preview and edit a PDF in preview and write this in. It doesn't matter whatever you want to do for that because it's not going to change. It's just the form now. So we'll save that. All right, so now you have your Docusign template and you have your Google form. So the next step is to get these two to connect, and we're going to do that through Zapier. So full disclosure, you are going to need the paid version of Zapier for this if you are doing it the way that we're doing it with a pre-existing form with multiple options on the form. But if you create a form specifically for buyer's agency and you don't have any other forms connected to that form, so the whole form is being taken into consideration every time it's used, I think you can get away with the free version. But I don't know if they limit the amount of times you can use your Zap if you have the free version. I'm not 100% sure. So that's just something to think about. We can look at this one that I made. So when you go into the editor, it looks like this. I'm going to edit it. So the first thing you do is you want to pick Google Forms as your main. So when you were there, you just create a new Zap and it'll open up a page that's blank. So the first thing that you do is you want to pick Google Forms because that's what we're trying to connect. And the event that you want is a new form response. You don't want an updated or edited form response. There's like other options, but you just want new form response. Then you're going to want to connect your the account that you created the Google Forms on. Pretty straightforward, just connect. And then the trigger, so this is going to be the form that you want it to read from. This is our contract admin form, so that's the one that I wanted. That's why it's here. I selected it. When you like click on this, you just, it basically opens up every form that you've ever had in a list form, and it's like, do you want to use this one or this one? You just search for what you want and select it. And then you want to test your response. So what I always do right before I made this app, I went in and I filled out my form as a test, and I like wrote like test one, like whatever. So I went through and I actually filled out my form as if I was filling it out. And then that way, when I went back over here, I had a response to pull from. You can see it right here. This is my test. So then I'm going to come back to this filter because a lot of you probably won't use it. The filter is specifically for our situation where we're using this contract form that has more than one form attached to it that might not necessarily apply every time. So I'm going to come back to that. So if you were doing this simply, you would have, well, Google Forms is called Buyer Agency. That's what the form would be called. That is what you would connect straight to Docusign. So let's go and look at that. So what do we want to happen with Docusign? We want it to send the envelope using a template because we created our template in Docusign. Then you want to connect your Docusign account, which I've done here. And then this is where the important stuff is going to happen. So the template ID was new buyer agency agreement. We remember that from over here, new buyer agency agreement. This would be if you wanted Docusign to send an email straight from them with your buyer agency agreement. But what I did is I actually have that already set up in here. Straight in Docusign where it said add message. I already have a message in here. You can see my message if you want. I'll hold on this for a second in case you want to read it, but I just recommend writing your own message, whatever you want to say. This is important. This was for our admin, and if you have an admin or you want to keep better track of your DocuSigns in your email, if you want to be able to like basically like quick search your email for a specific buyer's agency agreement on the fly. These two things you see right here, the buyer one username, buyer two username, that's going to be really important for you. You want to copy this exactly. So I'll hold on this. You want to have this written exactly like you see here with the two brackets, and that will automatically put the buyer's name in the subject line of the email. So I will let you guys do that. So I don't have this filled out because I just showed you where I have it filled out in Docusign. So I don't worry about this, but if you wanted to do it here instead of Docusign, you could. I don't think there's a benefit though. Now here you can see it wants buyer to email and it's asking what part of my form is going to connect to that. So I here have connected buyer to email. Then it wants to know what's buyer two's name. And of course here I've connected buyer to name. And it says no data because in my test response that we did a step earlier, I didn't put in a buyer two, I only had a buyer one. So it recognizes that there could be a buyer two in here, but that there is no data currently for that because my test didn't have that, but that's okay. Delivery method for buyer two, we want it to say email. Then we scroll down here, we see Agent Oliver, and it wants to know what connects with that. The Agent Oliver is straight from my new buyer agency agreement. So what part of my form connects to that? Obviously, Agent Oliver email, Agent Oliver name, and we want that to be emailed. And then here's important, this is where that checkbox and that dropdown for commission came into play. In my test, I selected 5% commission from my form dropdown. So I want the dropdown to connect to the commission section of the form. So that's why I have that here. This is a very important step. Buyer one, email, name, same exact thing as buyer two, and email. And then you would move on to test, and you would test your step and make sure that it works properly. And then if it works and it looks like, see, as you can see here, my test worked. So we would publish our Zap and we would be good to go. and it would supposedly work. So what I did multiple times is I tested it up here in my form, which I'm going to do just to show you guys at the end. But before we do that, let's go back to this filter that I put in and why I put it in. So I wanted to put a filter in because I knew we were going to be using this contract form that has more than one form. Agents submit their listing info sheets, they submit purchase info sheets, multiple things in this one form. So we don't want Zapier to send a incomplete, like obviously we can't do this for listing agreements because you have to put in like the contract. So it's different every time. So we don't want Zapier to be sending this buyer agency thing to our listing agreements. We need this to only work if they submit the buyer, this section of our form, the buyer brokerage agreement section. So what we did, I'm not cutting that out. What we did is put this filter in, and you can see my filter says to only continue if they select option 1 of our form up here. Option 1, buyer brokerage agreement. So now it will only work if they select that and it matches that text exactly. So what kind of contract are you looking for? Text matches exactly buyer brokerage agreement. It now is telling me my Zap would have continued because all my test records were obviously for this. So my Zap would have continued, which is perfect. We wanted it to continue. That's what we want to have happen. So if it says that it like wouldn't have, then you know that you did it wrong. Or if you're trying to make it filter it out and it says it would have, you know you did it wrong and you need to go back and make sure. One thing is that if you don't pick this correctly, it will say it will come up with an error and it says like any test will go through. Like there's no way we would ever filter this out because it's too vague. And when that happens, you just want to change it so that it looks exactly like this. You have to say text exactly matches. You can't do text excludes for this particular one. This just was the one that worked for me. So you want it to look like this. I'm not gonna. Cool. Okay. So that is the Zapier that's how we set it up and how we got it to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through and fill it out. I selected buyer brokerage agreement. We require agents to do this, so I'd click it. And then I did this like multiple times when I was setting this up because I wanted to make sure that it worked. As you can see, I ignored buyer 2 again because it's not necessary, but we've tried it with and without buyer 2 and it works both times. So that's good. Commission, I will pick that. No, it's just a test. And then I will submit it. And now we wait for the Docusign to be created. And as you can see, it did work. The Docusign template was created. It's right here. Complete with Docusign, test for video. That's the one that we just made. It's here in our sent Docusign folder. And then I also pulled up my email so that you could see it. Let's start with, this is me as the agent. This is my work email that I put in as Agent Oliver. So you can see the subject line. It just says complete with Docusign. And then it says buyer 1's name here. It doesn't have that awkward like buyer 2 username that you can see here. It does know to automatically cut that out. So it just says the buyer 1 name, which in this case is test for video. So then they're able to just, if I was the agent, I would just be able to quickly click on it. It loads up. I agree, continue, start, and I can just sign it. Let's just say that's my signature. Great. And then you remember that I chose 3% on the form, and you can see here it automatically loaded up. So we're good to go. I just push choose, I push sign, and I push finish. And I don't have to think about anything. It's all nice and filled out for me and legal. So we're good there. And then let's pretend that I am the buyer. Don't judge my unread emails. I would be able to review the documents. I agree. Continue. And now I am the first buyer, so I sign right here. That's my signature, sign, and I can see here that it's been filled out, 3%. That's good. I'm signing, I'm happy. Finish. And I don't want to log into Docusign. Thank you very much. Great, great, great. Cool. So then I just got 2 emails that talked about my completed Docusign. And when we go over here to agreements, it should say completed now. There it is, completed. And it sends a copy of those contracts with the completed signatures in your email. So both you as the agent, your admin, if you put them on the CC list, and your buyer will all have a copy of the contract that you can file away and keep and make sure that it's what you wanted. I do want to show you guys. Just gonna do it. You can view the completed documents here. And I just realized I didn't highlight the date. So you can see today is the 26th of 2024, and it automatically input here for 8/26/2025 because of that function that I showed you in Docusign earlier, where we added 1 year to the current date. So that's worked perfectly. We're good to go. So that's how we do it. That is how we set up our buyer brokerage agreements to get automatically sent from a Google form through Zapier into Docusign so that everyone can sign it. This has been really helpful for us in getting those buyer brokerage agreements signed before showings and just making sure that we're compliant with the law. So if you have any questions, let me know. And other than that, thank you for watching, and I hope this wasn't incomprehensible. Okay, bye.